This special edition of the Good Friday Appeal is proudly brought to you by Channel 7 and the Herald Sun.
In 1870, a post-gold rush Melbourne was growing, and Dr. William Smith, along with Dr. John Singleton, saw the need for a hospital dedicated to the care of children. The Melbourne Free Hospital for Sick Children opened at 39 Stephen Street in the city. This later became known as Exhibition Street. The first hospital was home to only 6 beds. It was not long before the hospital changed its name to the Melbourne Hospital for Sick Children and moved to bigger premises at 13 Spring Street. The hospital moved again in 1876 to the former home of famous Melbourne judge Redmond Barry on the corner of Pelham and Rathdown Streets in Carlton, now with 24 beds. But those 24 beds were not able to cope in the early 1930s with an infantile paralysis or polio epidemic striking in the interwar years. An orthopaedic branch of the Children's Hospital was opened in Mount Eliza to house the children who had contracted the disease. The branch was highly regarded by both Australian and international doctors and was considered the showcase of the Children's Hospital for many years. Over the years, the orthopaedic branch added a pool and a gym to assist the children on their often long journey back to health. In 1948, 10 acres in Royal Park was designated by the government as the site of the new Children's Hospital. Queen Elizabeth opened that hospital in 1962, and the children were moved into their new beds from the old hospital. Today, we have one of the best children's hospitals in the world. A hospital that has been saving the lives of children for 150 years, and with your help, for another 150 years.
Good evening and welcome to a very different Royal Children's Hospital Good Friday Appeal for 2020. It's looking a lot different this year, but as you're all very aware, 2020 has become a year like no other. While we're unable to bring you the coverage of the appeal that you're used to seeing, the stars and entertainers are all, like you, at home watching. So tonight we want to celebrate the incredible work the hospital does in looking after and saving the lives of one of the most precious gifts in our world, our children. This year, the Royal Children's Hospital is celebrating 150 years, a century and a half providing care to Victoria's sickest and most vulnerable children and young people. The story of how the hospital has gone from humble beginnings to becoming one of the world's great hospitals for children is as impressive as it is unique. It's a story of visionary people dedicated to building something extraordinary. A story of thousands of heroes whose tenacity and commitment as medical innovators, doctors, nurses, educators, researchers, philanthropists, fundraisers, administrators, volunteers and supporters has created a much-loved institution with a place in the heart of all Victorians.
And while the hospital celebrates 150 years, the Good Friday Appeal is in its 89th year, and since the appeal started back in 1931, an incredible $363 million has been raised. Money raised from the appeal goes towards funding state-of-the-art equipment, groundbreaking research and staff excellence programs to ensure treatment at the Royal Children's Hospital remains first class. We understand these are difficult times, but if you would like to continue to support the great work of the hospital, you can still donate online.
Every year there is a very special face of the appeal, and I had the pleasure of meeting and chatting with her, and she's one incredible little girl. Let's take a look at this year's face of the appeal, 6-year-old Queenie.
She was terribly swollen, had blood pressure problems, breathing problems, and there was major concerns that she wasn't going to survive.
Jared came home and we decided to head into hospital. I still remember really clearly holding each other's hands on the way in and saying it was going to be okay, and that everything would be fine, it was just better to check. And then my obstetrician came in with an ultrasound and she kept looking at me saying that, "I'm so sorry, but your baby has passed away." There was this excitement that we were going to become parents, and then a real sadness to it as well, of this beautiful little face that wasn't going to be in our family. Our other baby was dying as well.
So she was having nutrition through the IV, but there was nothing getting past. And so she was expanding, and the fluid overload in her body was huge.
When you're accumulating fluid, the fluid goes into all the body compartments, including the lungs. So the more fluid that accumulates, the more the respiratory support needs to be there, the ventilation, and the more difficult it is for that child to then potentially tolerate a surgical procedure.
And the doctor's not been able to give you an update as to whether, one, she was going to live, but two, what you're going to look forward to, because they just couldn't tell us.
We can't plan for more than a day ahead when we're in a situation like Queenie was in for the first week or 2 weeks. We plan for the next 4 to 6 hours.
They were sort of saying, if this next treatment doesn't work, there's not much else we can do.
So we try and give the family the best chance of having a quality of life and not being stuck in hospital. And that needs a lot of support for the family, constant calls back and forward, and that's largely done through our peritoneal dialysis nurse consultant.
My purpose of donating my kidney was for Queenie to have a better life.
For Rod to come forward and say that he was willing to put his life in danger to save Queenie was just the most beautiful gift. We got the phone call to say that she was out and that it was a huge success. And then this burst of energy just came with it. We feel like Queenie's life started after transplant. Just watching her completely flourish has just been so good. We focus on gratitude, the things that have gone really well and the things that we are so lucky to have. We always talk about that Harriet comes as butterflies, so very, very strange times of holidays and things, there will be a butterfly around us, and usually a butterfly playing around Queenie, and we always know she's sort of is not too far from us.
What an extraordinary story and what an ordeal to live through. Let's meet Queenie and her mum Claire via Skype from their home. Hello, how are you there? Hello, there you are. Now, how is Queenie doing?
Good. Oh, you're good, yeah. Yeah, she's doing wonderful, thank you. As I said in the footage, post-transplant, we just saw a whole new life start for her. It was like her 6 years actually. It's been really like 3 because her life began after transplant. She's been a completely wonderful, happy child. It's awesome.
It's such a wonderful story to see, Claire. What's daily life like for you and Queenie now?
Busy, very, very busy. So Queenie's energy, it never stops, which is amazing. But she's a very, very happy girl that wants to do and experience life as a normal 6-year-old. So Queenie's started school this year, which she has loved, and we spend lots of time on bikes and scooters and lots of playing.
Oh, lots of energy there. Now, how much does Queenie understand about her medical condition?
She does know a lot, actually. So we've, since before she could even talk, we explained to Queenie everything that has happened. She knows all about her scars and knows what every scar was for. She knows about her dialysis and her kidney transplants, and that's talks about that is very normal for our household, bloods and IVs and all of that sort of stuff. She's herself on the camera, so she's quite excited. So it's just very normal for Queenie, and she has a dog, Cookie, as we've sort of spoke about before. So Cookie goes through whatever Queenie goes through as well, so it helps her understand a lot of the processes as well. So,
has Queenie enjoyed the media exposure of being the face of the appeal, Claire? Queenie could possibly answer the question.
Are you excited being on the face of the appeal?
Yes.
Yes, very excited. She loves it. There's a big cardboard cutout at the reception at the hospital. She absolutely loves that. Every time we go there, she goes to see herself. And we said, listen, people are watching you. So this one day she ran up to her cardboard cutout and hugged it and was so excited to see herself, but the whole thing came crashing down. So she ended up falling on top of herself, which she thought was very funny.
That is fantastic. Just on a bit more of a serious note, if there was one thing you could say to those at the RCH who have looked after Queenie, what would it be?
Oh, goodness, one thing. It makes me so emotional, really, because she wouldn't be here. We would have no daughters if it wasn't for the Royal Children's. They saved her life countless times over. I also say too that they actually really saved Jared and my life as well, because the care we were all given, not so much the medical care as well as the emotional support, everything around that. Oh, goodness me. So the energy. It's only really, we thank them so much for the life that we've got, because we wouldn't have her, definitely. We wouldn't have had her 3 days in if it wasn't for the amazing, incredible medical stuff they have at the Royal Children's. So we love it, absolutely love it.
It's such a remarkable story and an emotional one too. Thank you, Claire and Queenie, for that performance, and have a very happy Easter.
Thank you, you as well.
And after the break, we catch up with Estelle Grieping, who shares some very special stories from the Royal Children's Hospital.
The Good Friday Appeal Raffle is back. There are 10 amazing prizes up for grabs, including a brand new Mazda CX-9, a Majestic Night Caravan, Qantas business class flights to Honolulu, and more. Plus, buy 5 tickets or more and go into the bonus draw to win a scenic European river cruise. Grab your $10 tickets now at goodfridayappeal.com.au. The 2020 Good Friday Appeal Raffle, proudly supporting the Royal Children's Hospital.
Welcome back to this special edition of the Royal Children's Hospital Good Friday Appeal. Thanks for joining us. While the hospital celebrates 150 years, the Good Friday Appeal has been raising money for the Children's Hospital since 1931, started by a small group of journalists from the Herald and Weekly Times and the Sporting Globe. It was in the form of a sports carnival for charity. The Seven Network joined the appeal in 1957 and has been broadcasting a telethon ever since. Along with the Herald Sun, our newsroom has brought so many stories into the living rooms of our viewers, many who have supported the Good Friday Appeal year after year.
Estelle Griepink is one of those journalists who spends time at the hospital bringing us these inspiring stories of the children, their families and the doctors and nurses who care for them. Estelle, thank you very much for joining us. You produced a number of stories from the hospital in the lead up to tonight. Tell us about that.
Well, Jane, Mitch, it is actually so special to be able to tell just some of the stories at the Royal Children's Hospital, and it's unlike any other job we really do covering news. When we walk into the hospital, it's not just the people that we're there to interview who want to speak to us. I often have kids coming up to me and wanting to tell me about what they've been going through, and they always want to sing the praises of the doctors and nurses who have been looking after them. So it really is a special place.
Wow, Estelle, please tell us about your first story and little Evie.
Well guys, Evie is such a cute little girl and you really wouldn't be able to tell just how far she's come and the life that she's led just in those short few years. When she was born, she was almost immediately rushed off to the Royal Children's and they worked extremely hard to save her life. She was diagnosed with a very rare heart condition and actually had to undergo open heart surgery as a newborn. She was only a couple of hours old. Now her mum, Kirsty, actually used to work at the Royal Children's as a nurse, so she says she knows the family was in the best possible hands.
As a cardiac nurse at the Royal Children's, Kirsty Turner helped families going through the fight of their lives. She never thought she'd become a patient there herself after giving birth to daughter Evie.
Being a nurse, I kind of knew something was wrong, so I kind of knew straight away.
Just hours after being born, Evie was diagnosed with an extremely rare heart condition.
So a lot of the blood that was meant to go to her left side of the heart was going back to the right side of the heart. So she was getting no oxygen to her body.
The Royal Children's sprung into action to save her life.
Evie arrived, I remember it was just after midnight, and she was pretty sick actually. So our ICU team mobilised and they actually did an open chest operation urgently on her 3 hours after she arrived.
After the surgery, she and Kirsty spent 6 weeks in hospital.
And after working here, I knew, we had to come here because I knew they had the best equipment and nurses and doctors.
What happened to Evie wouldn't have been possible if the donations, without the hospital, without the donations. Until it happens to you, I guess you really don't understand.
She's now a bubbly little girl with a bright future ahead of her.
You know, if you didn't know that she'd had urgent or heart surgery within the first day of life, and you didn't see her scar, you would never know. For us, that's the best outcome, to see her the way she is these days.
An incredible story, Estelle. Now tell us about your next story on Lucas.
Well, we met Lucas when we actually visited the rehab centre at the Royal Children's, where kids learn how to do exercises after they've come out of operations and things like that. And Lucas had a very unique story. He had actually started his first day of school completely healthy, but then suddenly he was struck down by a rare syndrome where he quickly lost mobility of most of his body. And at the worst point, he was in the ICU and he couldn't walk. So I met up with his parents and Lucas when he was in one of these rehab classes, and they told me about just how far they've come being at the Royal Children's.
Welcome to the future of physio.
Hey, Lucas, how are you? Good.
This friendly robot getting kids excited about routine rehab.
I am working here to help children do their exercises and get stronger.
It can get pretty boring or difficult staying in hospital for a long time, so anything that mixes it up a bit is really good.
It's basically, it moves like a human, and it can also talk. It shows you how to do it, and it's just more fun.
9-year-old Lucas has been an inpatient at the Royal Children's for 44 days.
I'm excited to go home because I've been here for a long time.
A little-known syndrome saw the grade 4 student go from this to this.
Died something very serious.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
GBS, Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Guillain-Barré essentially affects the body from the bottom up, and then recovery is from top down. It started off with muscle pain, and then the mobility started to cease. So I think there was a period of about 5 weeks where he hadn't walked at all.
Lucas's recovery has been remarkable.
And it's been a whirlwind of treatment. We spent 11 days in intensive care as well on a respirator.
And his parents will always be grateful for the care they received at the Royal Children's.
You know, having this little man on my lap, and another one at school, I think it's really what it's all about.
Well done. Nice work.
Thanks, Estelle. After the break, we meet a doctor from the Royal Children's Hospital and the story of another brave little girl.
This special edition of the Good Friday Appeal is proudly brought to you by Channel 7 and the Herald Sun.
Hi, I'm Jackie Felgate from 7 Sport and 7 News, and these are my kids, Georgia and Maddie. The Royal Children's Hospital is particularly dear to our hearts. Maddie was 6 weeks old when she went to the hospital, and that's okay, Georgia's going to leave.
One of my most favourite memories growing up was rattling the tins on the street corners of Bendigo, and we'll get back there again. We really will.
To me, the Good Friday Appeal, it's all about the kids and their care.
The Royal Children's Hospital will always be here for Victorians and our children. And next year, the appeal will no doubt be back bigger than ever.
The big highlight for me is always seeing the kids. The smiling faces and the positive attitude. It just really is inspirational. So big g'day to those kids. We wish we could be there. We're certainly going to be there next year. We're here for you and we're always here for you. So we'll be back next year. Can't wait to see you then.
Welcome back to our Good Friday Appeal special. There is no more appropriate time than now to acknowledge the work those in the medical profession do more than ever before. They are at the front line, putting the care of others before themselves. The doctors and nurses at the Royal Children's Hospital do exactly that, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
One of those doctors is David Chong, a plastic surgeon who specialises in craniofacial surgery. Here is David's story.
What attracted me about plastic surgery was that you could work on all parts of the body and you really seemed to make a difference for people. I gravitated towards the face especially because I always thought, what is it about the face that we assume so much about each other just because of the way that we looked? Every child that I see has been an investment from maybe 1 year ago, maybe 3 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, where I've put in, 2 or 3 hours of my time, and to see this ongoing repercussion of an operation that I did however many years ago and seeing the parents come in and just so happy that their child can live a normal life or as minimally affected as possible by what they were born with is a wonderful feeling, and knowing that the family's very happy that they met you and that you're part of their lives. As a young person, I had the experience of going through prejudice, back in the 70s. It was a different place, Australia. I was very blessed to come to this country, no doubt. But there were people who treated me differently because of the way that I looked. And I always remember that feeling of injustice, that life wasn't fair. Why were these people judging me about something I can do nothing about and actually has nothing to do with who I am? And so when I found an outlet through my chosen career to be able to change that, for children who were born with something that made them different, it was just seemed like such an obvious thing to do. I didn't think of it that way when I chose it, but now I look back at it, I'm like, wow, when I have a part in healing these kids, that somehow I'm actually healing myself.
What an attitude. Remarkable work Dr. Chong is doing at the Royal Children's Hospital. He's also a volunteer 3 to 4 times a year to operate and teach in developing countries.
Our next story is about a young couple who are experiencing all the excitement of bringing home their first beautiful baby girl, when only a few weeks later their lives were turned upside down when she became very ill. This is the story of little Lucy.
I was over the moon when we found out we were having a little girl. We'd just had a miscarriage a few months earlier, and yeah, it was happy tears, yeah.
Lucy had cried in the past, and you know she'd got over it, but it was a different sort of cry. It hurt to hear it.
And I said to Will, I was like, we're going to the hospital, something's not right. Like it probably was mother's instinct, but I just said we need to take her in. One of the doctors told us that she was in heart failure and her heart was failing, and they don't know why, but they're doing the best that they can.
In the coming days, I was at that point where I thought she definitely put up a really good fight, and she was struggling quite a lot. So I guess I kind of said goodbye to her every time I went in and saw her.
How could you have someone in your life for 3 weeks and then be faced with her being taken away?
So a Berlin heart is a type of ventricular assist device, or more commonly known as a VAD. It's an artificial heart pump that we implant when a child's heart's not going to be life-sustaining. So we implant the VAD to help keep the child alive until either their own heart recovers or they have it as a bridge to transplant. Being on a VAD's not without its complications, and parents are terrified that their child will develop a complication, and then that may impact on them actually moving on to transplant. So it's a very challenging time for the parents when they're living here on the ward.
There's a ward full of babies and kids waiting for a transplant. Before this, I never even considered that kids would need a transplant. I don't know if it's because you don't want to think of kids needing transplants to save their life, but we've met so many families, be it livers, kidneys, hearts, that they need these to give them a second go at life, and to think that this beautiful gift, this amazing gift that someone has given in their darkest of days has saved another baby's life. It's so special.
Very special indeed. Lucy is now 3 years old and is doing really well. She has cardiology appointments every 6 to 8 weeks in Adelaide and returns to the RCH every 6 months.
And I have it on good authority. Lucy loves being outside, Mitch, drawing and craft, singing and dancing and visiting her grandparents' farm.
Yes, indeed. Great to hear, and we'll be back after the break with another story from Estelle.
Hello everyone.
This year is the 89th year of the Good Friday Appeal. 89 years supporting our sick children in the Royal Children's Hospital. 2020 is certainly being a tough year, and we thank you for your ongoing generosity and support. In particular, I'd thank all of our volunteers. You're the backbone of the appeal, our many corporate sponsors who come together to raise funds, and our fabulous media partners. But most importantly, I'd like to thank you, our community, for always supporting the appeal and so generously and for so long. Thank you so much.
The Good Friday Appeal would like to thank the Woolworths team and customers for their support of the appeal over the past 33 years. From fresh food fairs and gala balls to their annual in-store raffle, they've raised over $23 million. The Elizabeth Murdoch College, who every second year hold the I Can Challenge, a 50-kilometre walk from St Kilda to Frankston. While their event didn't take place in 2020, they still raised $93,930. The Pied Pipers was founded in 1969 when a small group of people working on the appeal banded together to form a social and fundraising club. Their first collection in 1970 netted $3,675, and to date they've raised $8.3 million. With this year's Herald Sun Transurban Run for the Kids unable to take place, many participants donated their entry fee. Since its launch in 2006, they've raised $18.6 million. The remarkable donation amounts from the Royal Children's Hospital Auxiliary reflects the many events they organise and the countless goods they make and sell. Working tirelessly, this year they've raised $1,511,000. The Uncle Bob's Club dates back to 1941, when a raffle book was passed around the bar of the Riversdale Hotel in Hawthorne. The club's first association with the appeal in 1948 netted £1,200. Since then, they've raised $18.5 million. Thank you to these and the many organisations who year after year raise money for the Good Friday Appeal.
Welcome back to this special edition of the Good Friday Appeal. There are so many people in our community who contribute to the success of the Royal Children's Hospital by fundraising for the Good Friday Appeal, and that was just some of them. To all the fundraisers, we say thank you.
A big thank you indeed. It's been a tough 6 months for members of the CFA with the devastating bushfires throughout our state and other parts of Australia. They are one of the biggest fundraisers for the Good Friday Appeal and would normally be out there shaking tins on the street corners and in towns right throughout Victoria. They've been a part of the appeal since 1951 and their members were devastated when they couldn't support the appeal in the traditional way. As such, the idea for a virtual tin came about. Instead of dropping a few coins into a tin when you're stopped at the lights, the CFA have asked you to go online, select your regional town or metro area and donate in the virtual. Last year, the CFA raised an incredible $1.6 million, and throughout the years since, they've been collecting a total of $34 million. Tonight, we acknowledge and thank all the members of the CFA and wish them all the very best. I know they'll be out there next year rattling those tins and raising funds for the appeal.
Wow, they sure do a fantastic job for the appeal. Now to another story from Estelle Greepink on a young girl battling sickle cell disease.
Without a bone marrow transplant, Paolo Joy faced a life spent in and out of hospital. Life-threatening sickle cell disease meant constant visits to the Royal Children's.
I had to get transfusions every 3 weeks.
But not anymore.
Paolo is finally cured of the sickle cell disease.
No medications, no transfusions, so it's really great.
A successful transplant means Paolo can now live life like any other child. Her 13-year-old sister Walia donating her bone marrow.
I was really scared, but I was also happy because I was helping my sister.
Paolo and her parents spent 40 days in isolation.
So she was in that ward right there up there.
We just had to sit in bed all day and it was very boring.
But the family agree it was all worth it.
Very stressful, but at the end when I looked back at it, it was a very easy experience for her. Yeah.
I don't have to miss out on school a lot and I can live a normal life now.
It's a fantastic thing for me and for our whole team to share in the joy of the success of her treatment and to really watch her grow and thrive now with that fantastic outcome for the family.
And they say they'll always be thankful to the Royal Children's.
So grateful that I would want to cry, but...
Thanks, Estelle, for bringing us those moving and inspiring stories from the Royal Children's Hospital.
We'll be back after the break with more.
Hi everybody, Hamish McLaughlin here with my eldest daughter Milla, Indy. My middle daughter's behind the camera and Lex is playing with dinosaurs somewhere. We just wanted to say a big hello to all of the patients at the Royal Children's Hospital and a massive thank you to all the team that works at the Royal Children's Hospital. When Milla was 8 months old, Soph and I took Milla in and were really concerned, and we met some brilliant individuals, Jeremy Freeman and Daniel Golshevsky, who are both heroes of ours now. What do you call Daniel?
Dr. Gully.
And he saved, with Jeremy, your life. What do you remember of the Royal Children's Hospital?
Nothing straightforward, but what I do remember is that they looked after me very well, and they're all a big part of my life. Thank you so much for all looking after me. You're all stars.
You're all stars, and a family member needs the team at Royal Children's Hospital every minute of every hour of every day of every week, and we need to continue to keep giving. Hopefully next year we're all together, but thank you for making our family whole, because without you, she wouldn't be here. Happy Easter, everyone.
Welcome back to our special edition of the Good Friday Appeal. The Royal Children's Hospital is not only a hospital for the children of Victoria, but children from interstate and overseas. Last year, more than 3,500 kids came from interstate for treatment at the hospital. One such family were the Loring family from Tasmania. Here's their story.
We've got 3 kids.
Christy, Adam and Cameron.
We live on a little bit of land at Boat Harbour.
Yeah, we've got a little property we mess around on.
So after a trip to the doctor, they suggested that we keep an eye on it and come back if it doesn't resolve itself.
After a bit of trying this and trying that, we went and got an ultrasound.
And that sort of confirmed that there was something not right.
She had a tumour in her adrenal gland. When you get the news from the doctors, you fear the worst.
Someone who seems so well and so healthy, to be told they have such a serious illness is just, it's shocking, it really is.
She unfortunately has the most aggressive subtype that had already spread throughout her body before we got to meet Christy, and it takes a rather lot of intensive therapy to try and get it better.
The first 5-6 months were pretty intense.
Oh, it's impacted us greatly. I mean, the first few months I was living over here with Christy, and Pete and the boys made the odd trip over to visit, and then we decided we'll just move the family over, just make our life here together.
Christy is currently in remission, but even when therapy is finished, we have to do a lot of crossing our fingers and hoping that the treatment has been enough.
Every time she gets better, she just, keeps getting better, so it's been really good. I wish she can have just a normal, happy life and live to an old age.
Just be happy and just be everything she wants to be and do everything she wants to do.
Seeing her now near the end of her therapy, most of the time she's actually looking really well. That's what makes me want to do the job, is actually see them get better. And fortunately, we see that more often than not. So it's great.
The best care we could receive for her was here at Melbourne at the RCH.
I'm very pleased to report Christy is doing really well and has settled back into life in Tasmania with her family. She's now in grade 2 and has checkups every 6 months. These checkups don't necessarily mean the family has to travel back to Melbourne to the hospital. It can be done via a video call appointment called telehealth, which is great. After the break, we'll say goodnight to the children of the Royal Children's Hospital. Welcome back. Now, Mitch, over the years of the Good Friday appeal, we've had so many special moments. I went searching through the archives and found my favourite moment from 2013. Let's have a look at this.
Fight like the devil, the crowd's on your side. The crowd is on your side.
Oh, Mitch, so good.
I was just doing that for the kids, Jane, and it was up there Kazali, in case you're wondering my feeble attempt at it. Yeah. Now, let's move on then. The Good Friday appeal unites all Victorians, and each year we're joined by the Premier, and I'm pleased to say this year is no exception. Welcome, Mr Andrews. You've had a very busy several weeks. Thanks for finding the time to join us.
I always find the time for the Royal Children's Hospital, Mitch, and the Good Friday appeal. This is a hospital that's owned by every single Victorian. We're all comforted to know that the best children's hospital in the world is right here in Melbourne, and in its 150th year, I'm very pleased to be with you for a different Good Friday appeal.
And Premier, I believe you've got an announcement to make.
Well, look, we know that Victorians are doing it very tough, and this Good Friday appeal is unlike any other. It's very difficult to go and raise those funds in a practical sense, but it's also really hard for Victorians to give as generously as they might normally do, given so many people are out of work, and it's a very different year, 2020. So on behalf of the government, I can commit that we will contribute. We'll fill the gap between whatever was raised last year, just over $18 million, and whatever is raised this year, because we can't have the kids go without the things that they need. The Good Friday appeal is really special to us, and it's important that we take this step.
Well, that's the best news we've had all year, I think. I'm sure all Victorians would be thrilled to hear what you've just said.
Well, look, this is a very special place, and as I said, every Victorian has a stake in this and is comforted to know it's the best children's hospital in the world. And I'll never forget the small part that I played together with the late Tony Bettison, a great Victorian, when he was chair of the hospital, in building the brand new facility. The Good Friday appeal supports the neediest kids that are sick and their families every year, and we can't leave the kids short this year.
Well, that's wonderful news indeed, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
This is indeed a history-making night, and we're proud to stand with you as Victorians. In keeping with your instructions, Premier, around social distancing, Chairman of the Good Friday appeal, Penny Fowler, joins us from her home. Penny, how are you feeling after that news?
Wow, Peter, that is amazing. I'm speechless. Thank you, Premier. Thank you so much on behalf of all the Victorian people, the Good Friday appeal, the hospital, our children. We can't thank you enough. That is just completely so generous of you and your government. These are such tough times for everybody, from the bushfires to coronavirus. And can I say, your leadership has been incredible. And this is just another example of that. To be so generous as a government and to come in and help us like this is just amazing. Thank you from the whole Victorian community. I know everyone wants to thank you for this incredible generosity from the government. And this is just, it's unbelievable. As I said, I'm speechless, blown away. Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Penny. Great news indeed. Wonderful news. And that brings this year's appeal to a surprising but a great close. Full details on the final tally will be in tomorrow's edition of the Herald Sun and on Weekend Sunrise and 7 News throughout the day.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Tonight you've been watching History as it happens. Next week, the hard work begins again as we make our way to the Good Friday Appeal 2021.
For now, we'll say goodnight to the kids at the hospital as they tuck into bed for a good night's sleep. Thanks for joining us. From everyone here, we wish you and your family a happy and healthy Easter.
Good night.
These youngsters are doing exactly what you're doing now. They're looking at television. The only difference is that while you're in the comfort of your own home, they're in hospital, the Melbourne Royal Children's Hospital. But even TV must give way to a good night's sleep. So now, it's off to bed. When it comes to the actual process of getting into bed, Alan, thank you very much, will quite capably cope with all the problems in his own particular way and in his own good time. Like every other youngster, he'd far rather be getting ready for his own bed, in his own room, in his own home. And one day soon he'll be well enough to do just that. Right now, this is a pretty satisfactory substitute.
This special edition of the Good Friday Appeal is proudly brought to you by Channel 7 and the Herald Sun.